Friendship University. Doesn't that make it FU?
And we love that you got that.
Today we have a very special episode of The Trickquisition as we talk about a topic very dear to my heart. Microtransactions in video games. Okay, not really, because in the end we're gonna talk about a pony episode instead, like I always do, but I wouldn't be tricky freaking fox, son, if I wouldn't at least acknowledge that this episode can be read as a commentary on the free-to-play business model. In the Season 8 episode Friendship University, Twilight and Rarity learned that the FlimFlam brothers opened a school to compete with Twilight's School of Friendship. To rub things in, their school is even approved by the EEA, and they even got Starsfur as a bearded to sign up, which is of course great PR. A lot of ponies seemingly only sign up to get the chance to study alongside the legendary Starsfur. Now, while it is rather mean-spirited that FlimFlam advertise their university as better and more efficient than Twilight's School, this is of course nothing out of the norm. Schools like to advertise how prestigious they are. And they didn't really advertise the fact that Starsfur is a student either. They use him later on to manipulate others in a rather shameless manner, but it seemingly wasn't part of their PR campaign. The actual draw to the university is the simple fact that their tuition is free of charge. If you haven't noticed the quotation marks in the tone of my voice, let me be perfectly clear. Of course the tuition isn't really free. You can attend classes for free, yes, but the actual meat of things are worksheets that FlimFlam sell for extra charge. So you could say that they introduced microtransactions to a free-to-learn experience. And much like a free-to-play game, they lure you in with a decent experience if you don't pay anything, but if you really want to get everything and progress, you have to spend some money. Now the episode portrays this business model obviously as something bad, which is somewhat ironic considering that the Gameloft MLP game is using a rather similar model, even if it is by far not the worst offender on the mobile market, but really, $30 only to immediately buy Celestia. I can't be the only one who thinks that this is a little bit much for one character. Of course, a free-to-play business model is not necessarily a bad thing if handled well, and some of my friends actually enjoy the MLP mobile game. I personally am addicted to Fate Grand Order, though I never spent a single buck on it, and I never will because that gacha system is a total ripoff. But the game is still very engaging if you play it for free, and I got a lot of things I wanted in that game anyway. Now the episode wants the audience to perceive FlimFlam's business model as bad as soon as Twilight learns of it, but fact of the matter is we can't really tell. Starsfur and even Rarity walked into it, and even Twilight, while looking over some worksheets in secret, admitted that they seemed rather interesting. So we know that FlimFlam are at least selling good quality. What we don't know is if you could get your degree without spending a single bit, or how expensive those worksheets are. They are seemingly not exactly cheap, but everyone we see in this episode acts like an addict that buys them in bulks. You know, like those whales that spend thousands of dollars on microtransactions in video games, so we can't be sure if Rarity, for example, spent more money on those than she needed. And last but not least, we don't know if buying all those sheets would be more expensive than studying at another university. I probably don't have to explain it to you, but higher education costs a lot of money, especially at rather prestigious universities. Not to mention that paying for these worksheets is technically speaking not that much different than buying those textbooks you have to buy yourself in college, and those can be ridiculously expensive as well. So even if you buy all of FlimFlam's worksheets, it is possible that studying at their university might still be a bargain, as it is still approved by the EEA, so a degree from that university has some weight to it. So technically speaking, there's nothing really wrong with FlimFlam's business model. From what we see in this episode, everyone is happy to pay for these worksheets. It is still disgusting how they manipulate their customers, but all things considered, it isn't that bad. Now, what makes this a bit more complicated is the fact that we learn at the end that they copied Twilight's book on friendship lessons. Now, here we go into the more shady stuff. It is easy to say that FlimFlam asset flipped Twilight's work. The question is if they really did that. They said that they copied every other page, but to make that work they would need to abridge it and alter it so it can be easily digested. This is further supported by the fact that neither Rarity or Twilight recognized it as plagiarism, which is especially noteworthy in the latter case as she wrote it. So in a way you could say that both Flim and Flam did nothing what your normal teacher who models his class after a textbook does. It really depends on how much they change stuff, and even then it might still count as plagiarism. That being said, Flim and Flam did a pretty good job apparently and might actually be very talented teachers. Not that they should be teachers, but they seem to be good at it. That being said, the actual scam in this whole thing is that Flim and Flam claimed that every bit they earned would be used to improve their university, when in actuality they want to use it to expand their resort. People have been sued for less. The funny thing is they could have gotten away with it. If they hadn't disclosed that the money is supposed to be only for the university, there wasn't really a reason to disclose anything. Education for profit is a pretty normal thing, especially for private schools such as these, but it is completely legal and they can still get their approval from the EEA this way. I mean, you could still think that this is immoral of them to do so, and I wouldn't blame you, but they could have done that. They might have earned a bit less this way, as some might have been unwilling to pay for their worksheets if they hadn't assured them that every bit is used for the university, but considering how many students they attracted that genuinely liked their lessons, they still would have turned quite a profit. So you could say they failed in the end because they weren't happy with some money, because they wanted all of the money. Of course, Flim and Flam's scheme is not the only noteworthy thing about this episode. It also saw the return of Starswirl the Bearded. I do think he wasn't really as involved in this plot as he could. He barely talked with Twilight, even though him disapproving of Twilight not being willing to give Flim and Flam a second chance was a rather interesting conflict. Not to mention that it showcases his character growth, as he was the one unwilling to give ponies a second chance back in Shadowplay. I also would have liked if he had maybe exchanged a couple of lines with Naysay, considering that one of Starswirl's most heroic acts was to befriend Scorpion, which led to Tyric's defeat. So you would think that he would comment on Naysay's racism, especially since Starswirl is seemingly one of the few people Naysay actually respects. Speaking of Naysay, I wonder how involved he was in setting up the Friendship University. He obviously mostly approved it as an FU to Twilight, so much is clear. If he actually had bothered to do his job properly, he would have checked Flim and Flam's business model as well. Not to mention that this episode emphasized the fact that Twilight's book is not available to the public, and they don't know how Flim and Flam got it, considering that Twilight handed the EA several copies. He would have had easy access to it. They even use the same model they use in school days. So I am pretty sure that the book is a copy of Twilight's curriculum she presented in that episode, not something she wrote after she decided to do things her own way. However, Cozy Glow's inclusion in this episode and her showing up right after Rarity questions how Flim and Flam got the copy also makes her a little bit suspicious. If Cozy isn't a more important character than she seems, this small cameo would seem a bit too random and out of place. And seemingly a lot of people suspect that she is somehow connected with Naysay anyway, though at this point I can't do much more than to theorize. And now regarding Rarity and Twilight. Rarity is a real treat in this episode, and I do like that her Shadow Spade obsession has become a staple of her character by now. Well, the fact that she put that much effort into her own disguise while she only gave Twilight an eye patch just seems randomly stupid. Sure, it was funny, but it just seems weird. Well, Planety is not exactly the most creative nickname either. Her disguise will probably still spawn tons of fan art. Twilight on the other paw showcased again that she is not as forgiving as some people think she is. A lot of people complained that she behaved out of character in No Second Princess, a sentiment I disagree with. However, I do think that Twilight behaved a little bit too openly hostile in this one. This is admittedly nothing new either. Twilight really needs to learn how to behave more political in certain situations. Not to mention that actively trying to uncover some dirt by sneaking into the Flim Flam Brothers' office is pretty much trespassing, though I don't really have that much of a problem with that. What bothers me more is the overall lesson of this episode, that it is very important to stand up for the things that you know to be true. The problem is that Twilight could have very well been mistaken, and it is basically the opposite of the lesson Starswirl learned in Shadowplay. He thought he knew it to be true that Stygian is unredeemable evil. And while Twilight was right in the end, she let her suspicion get the better of her and acted recklessly in the process. The lesson itself is fine, but it goes too much towards an extreme in this one. The problem is less with the overall story in this regard, but rather that they decided to spell this lesson out like this, which can be interpreted in the wrong way. Friendship University is indeed a rather intriguing episode, seeing the return of some fan favorite characters, and it tackles some very interesting topics to boot. It certainly has its flaws, but overall I would consider it one of the better showings of Season 8. With that being said, thank Celestia for me.
Sly as a fox, you got me under your spell. But you know I'll never tell that I know you know so well.